For 50 years, the Central Intelligence Agency fought a secret war against the Soviet Union. It overthrew governments, rigged elections, and armed proxy armies, all in the name of containing communism. But on a clear Tuesday morning in September 2001, the Cold War paradigm was shattered forever. The enemy was no longer a rival superpower, but a stateless network of fanatics. And the CIA, the nation's first line of defense, was blind. The attacks of September 11, 2001 were not just a national tragedy. They were the single greatest intelligence failure in American history since Pearl Harbor. This is the story of how the CIA missed the warnings that could have stopped 9/11, and how that failure led the agency and the nation into a global war on terror. It's the story of how the hunt for Osama bin Laden in the mountains of Afghanistan morphed into a disastrous invasion of Iraq, built on a foundation of lies and fabricated intelligence. Using Tim Weiner's legacy of ashes and the 9/11 Commission report, we will reveal how the CIA, desperate to redeem itself, embraced a new, darker mission of secret prisons, torture, and targeted killings, and how it knowingly presented false intelligence to the world to justify a war. By the end of this video, you will understand that the war on terror was not just a response to an attack. It was a war born from the ashes of the CIA's own failure. A war that would redefine the agency and America's role in the world for the 21st century. If you believe that understanding the hidden strategies behind the world's most critical events is essential, then support our work. Like this video, subscribe to Strategy Codex, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Our story begins in the late 1990s, a period the CIA's own history calls the Dark Ages. The agency was adrift after the Cold War, its budget slashed, its ranks of experienced officers depleted, and a new threat was rising that the agency was ill-equipped to understand. His name was Osama bin Laden. As early as 1996, the CIA had created a small, dedicated unit to track him. It was called Alec Station, but it was underfunded, isolated, and ignored by the agency's leadership. The CIA's culture was still geared towards recruiting Russian diplomats in European capitals, not penetrating a shadowy terrorist network in the mountains of Afghanistan. There were so many warnings. In the years leading up to September 11th, the intelligence community was blinking red. Foreign governments passed on tips. NSA intercepts picked up chatter, but the pieces were never put together. The CIA and the FBI didn't talk to each other. Critical information was lost in the bureaucratic maze. In the summer of 2001, Director of Central Intelligence George Tenet was briefed on the rising threat. The president's daily brief on August 6, 2001, was titled, "Bin Laden Determined to Strike in U.S." But still, no one connected the dots. Two of the future 9/11 hijackers, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, were known to the CIA. The agency knew they had visas to enter the United States, but that information was never shared with the FBI. Those two men boarded American Airlines Flight 77.
We have a problem here. We have a hijacked aircraft headed towards New York, and we need we need someone to scramble some F-16s or something up there to help us out.
Is this real world or exercise?
No, this is not an exercise, not a test.
Okay, hey, hold on 1 second, okay?
Yep.
Hey, seriously, big time.
Kennedy Tower reports, are you serious? Kennedy Tower reports that there was a fire at the World Trade Center.
On the morning of September 11th, George Tenet was having breakfast with his mentor, former Senator David Boren. When an aide handed him a note that a plane had hit the World Trade Center, Tenet knew instantly. "This is bin Laden," he said. The attacks were a catastrophic failure of intelligence, a failure of imagination, a failure of the system. As the 9/11 Commission report would later conclude, the attacks were preventable. The CIA had failed in its most fundamental mission, to protect the United States from a strategic surprise attack. In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, the CIA was a wounded and enraged institution. President George W. Bush gave Tenet and the agency a blank check. "I want you to put them out of business," he said of Al-Qaeda. The gloves came off. The CIA was authorized to hunt, capture, and kill terrorists anywhere in the world. This was the birth of the modern CIA, an agency that would become a paramilitary force, a global killing machine. The first front in the new war was Afghanistan. Within weeks of the attacks, small teams of CIA officers carrying briefcases stuffed with millions of dollars in cash landed in the mountains of the Hindu Kush. They linked up with the Northern Alliance, a collection of warlords who had been fighting the Taliban for years. This was the CIA at its best, a return to its OSS roots. Small, agile teams of operators working with indigenous forces, calling in devastating airstrikes from B-52s flying miles overhead. By December 2001, the Taliban regime had collapsed. It was a stunningly swift and successful military operation, but the main prize, Osama bin Laden, had escaped. In the mountains of Tora Bora, bin Laden and his fighters were cornered, but the United States, relying on its Afghan warlord allies, failed to commit enough of its own troops to seal the trap. Bin Laden slipped across the border into Pakistan, where he would remain hidden for nearly a decade. The failure to capture or kill bin Laden at Tora Bora would haunt the CIA and the United States for years to come. With bin Laden gone and the Taliban defeated, the focus of the Bush administration began to shift. The neoconservatives in the White House, led by Vice President Dick Cheney and Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, had long wanted to topple Saddam Hussein in Iraq. They saw 9/11 as the opportunity to do it. They began to pressure the CIA to find a link between Saddam and Al-Qaeda and to find evidence that Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction, WMDs. The pressure was immense. The White House wasn't asking for intelligence, they were demanding it. They wanted intelligence that would justify a war. And the CIA, desperate to redeem itself after the failure of 9/11 and eager to please its political masters, delivered. The agency's analysis on Iraq became a case study in confirmation bias and politicized intelligence. Analysts who questioned the link between Iraq and Al-Qaeda were sidelined. Evidence was cherry-picked, and most damningly, the agency built its case for Iraqi WMDs on a foundation of fabricated and unreliable sources. The most notorious of these sources was an Iraqi defector codenamed Curveball. He was an alcoholic, a liar, and a fabricator. German intelligence who handled him warned the CIA that he was unreliable, but the CIA's station in Berlin, hungry for intelligence that fit the White House narrative, embraced him. Curveball's claims that Iraq had mobile biological weapons labs became the centerpiece of the administration's case for war. It was all a lie. As the CIA's own internal reports would later admit, the agency had knowingly used a source they had every reason to believe was a fabricator. In October 2002, the CIA issued a National Intelligence Estimate, NIE, that stated with high confidence that Iraq had chemical and biological weapons and was reconstituting its nuclear weapons program. It was the formal intelligence judgment that would be used to sell the war to the American people and the world. On February 5, 2003, Secretary of State Colin Powell went before the United Nations Security Council and presented the case for war. His presentation, which included satellite photos and artists' renderings of mobile biolabs, was based almost entirely on the CIA's flawed intelligence, most notably the claims of Curveball. It was a moment Powell would later call a blot on his record. What do you think about the pressure put on intelligence agencies to produce specific outcomes? Let us know in the comments. In March 2003, the United States invaded Iraq. The regime of Saddam Hussein fell in a matter of weeks, but the weapons of mass destruction were nowhere to be found. The CIA sent in its own teams led by David Kay to scour the country. They found nothing. The intelligence had been wrong. As Kay would later testify before Congress, we were almost all wrong. The CIA's reputation was in tatters. The agency that had failed to prevent 9/11 had now led the nation into a war based on a lie. President Bush, who had once given the agency a blank check, now dismissed its increasingly dire reports on the chaos in Iraq, saying the agency was just guessing. This was the CIA's darkest hour. The failure on Iraq was, in many ways, worse than the failure on 9/11. It was a self-inflicted wound, a betrayal of the agency's most sacred trust, to speak truth to power. The war in Iraq would drag on for years, costing thousands of American lives and hundreds of billions of dollars, and destabilizing the entire Middle East. It would become, as the CIA's own analysis later concluded, a cause célèbre for jihadists, breeding a deep resentment of U.S. involvement in the Muslim world and cultivating supporters for the global jihadist movement. The war to end terror had, in fact, created more of it. From the ashes of 9/11, a new CIA was born. It was an agency that excelled at paramilitary operations and targeted killings, a lethal instrument in a seemingly endless war. But it was also an agency that had lost its moral compass, that had embraced torture in its secret prisons, and that had sacrificed its analytical integrity on the altar of political expediency. The legacy of 9/11 and the Iraq War is a CIA that is more powerful and more feared than ever before, but also one that is less trusted, both at home and abroad. It is a legacy of ashes from which the agency and the nation are still struggling to emerge. If you want to continue exploring the hidden strategies that have shaped our world, make sure you subscribe to Strategy Codex and hit the notification bell. Our series on the CIA's secret history is complete, but our mission to uncover the truth is just beginning. Subscribe and join us as we continue to analyze the strategies of power. Keep questioning and keep seeking the truth.